concise when addressing this. I want to say I genuinely dislike how this situation was handled. Both parties are in the wrong here, and one side obviously being more in the wrong than the other, but let me explain. Before that though, I want to get one thing straight. I am not downplaying Cosmodore's actions here. As someone who's been in a similar situation to the victim, albeit years ago, I think it's really important to call out this type of behaviour and do whatever you can possible to get them out of the community. And if possible, contact authorities. I briefly mentioned this in a tweet longer, but this situation regarding Cosmodore has been handled very poorly. From dishonesty, holding back information purposely, to sensationalising abuse and child grooming. This, of course, all stemming from one person, Daftpina. This video isn't solely on Daftpina. Cosmodore is addressed later on, but I think Daft's involvements in this situation are pretty significant, and I think it's probably better to mention him first, and then we can move on to Cosmodore. My spot in the community is a weird one. I probably know more than I should, but the information I do know isn't public, and therefore I can't really use it to back up what I say. I think it's a given, but I don't think Daft is a bad person. I just think how he handled the situation was apathetic and idiotic. I guess we should start from the beginning. Not in December 2019, after Cosmodore posted originally his reveal post, but on the 21st of July 2020, where my friend Dylan was approached by Daftpina for a video. I think it's actually pretty appropriate to make a timeline of events here, so it's easier to follow. So here, my friend Dylan was an acquaintance of Cosmodore. They weren't friends, but they've definitely talked before. He was in a secret Cosmodore server, which has recently gained public knowledge due to the Daftpina video. It was a relatively underground server. Daftpina somehow got word of Dylan being in the server, and he then started messaging Dylan on Twitter, and then moving over to Discord. You're seeing screenshots in their full context right here, and you can make your own judgments. But here's my friend Dylan, and his perspective.
On July 21st, I received a Twitter message from Daftpina. I remember being quite caught off guard that this big YouTuber was DMing me, of all people. He asked if I was involved in Cosmo's private server. I gave him the rundown of stuff that took place in that server. He asked if I could provide him with screenshots through Discord. I agreed and started to collect the screenshots. I asked him what the screenshots were for, and he gave a very vague response, essentially saying he wanted to know the going-ons in the server. I'd finished collecting all of the screenshots, but after talking with friends, I started to question Daft's motives. I got a pit feeling in my stomach, a strong feeling of worry, thinking of what could happen if Cosmo saw my screenshots in Daft's video. I'd seen Cosmo wasn't the most stable person, and felt that if Cosmo did something bad, that would fall on me, and I didn't want that on my conscience. I spoke to one of Daft's friends, who told me they didn't want to get involved. The next morning, I spoke to Daft again. I asked him if it was for a video. He dodged the question entirely, and asked if Cosmodore had spoken to me for commission. Upon talking more about Cosmo, he said he was glad nothing happened between me and him, and insisted again on sending screenshots I had. I again asked what they were for, and expressed my hesitation on doing this, as I might be backstabbing Cosmo. Bear in mind, I was not aware of most of the malicious stuff Cosmo had done at this point in time. The response I got was that Cosmo has been dating a minor, and that Daft was investigating to see if there was possibly another. I then made it clear to Daft the girlfriend mentioned in the private server was not the minor. It was a 20-year-old girl Cosmo previously was dating. I told him I didn't really want to be a part of taking down Cosmo. Daft reassured me my information would be censored, and that me helping now would help many others in the future. This helped to worsen my state, as now I didn't know what to do at all. It's why I frantically DM'd friends asking what I should do. I asked Daft if he plans to take this to authorities. His response was, "We are doing what we can." Not necessarily the response I was hoping for. I responded asking such as, then I expressed to him how caught off guard I was, and that I didn't know how to react right now. Daft then told me that he appreciated my interest, but if I didn't send him the screenshots, then I would be aiding Cosmo by withholding evidence. This is what messed with me, and that me not getting involved would help Cosmo. Upon talking some more to Daft about the goings-on in the server, and trying to explain that it was mostly events from Cosmo, and that how I didn't see it was relevant to the video, he responded saying he didn't want to drag this on any longer. He thanked me for my time and told me to have a good day. I thought that was my problem solved initially, until I told Daft's friend what had happened. The friend suggested that I give Daft the usernames of the other members so that Daft wouldn't think I'm an accomplice to Cosmo. At that point I was worried that I might be targeted as a helper of Cosmo, so I gave Daft the usernames. At that point, it was radio silence for 3 days. Nothing between me and Daft. My friend had convinced me that it was a good idea to send him the screenshots, so I messaged Daft on the 25th of July. I told him I wasn't attempting to defend Cosmo. I gave Daft a request. If he would add a disclaimer in the video saying not to harass people mentioned. Thankfully, a disclaimer was implemented. I ended up sending him all 30 plus screenshots. After receiving them, he asked me a few questions. After answering them, we went our separate ways. Overall, I think some of the stuff Daft said to me could have been worded better. For that entire week, I would feel sick just thinking about the situation. I'm so glad it's not in my hands anymore. It's no longer my problem.
I think it would be relevant to discuss the different perspectives here. And since Dylan clarified his stance, I suppose, I would be covering Daft's. I tried my best to be fair here, but if any mistakes are made, it'll be mentioned in a comment below. Daftpina heard of Dylan being involved in the Cosmodore group chat and thus messaged Dylan, with the hopes of getting further insight into the goings-on in the server. To be fair to Daft, I think it would look like to anyone that Dylan was actually protecting Cosmodore. The messages Daftpina sent are expected of someone in that position. Aside from coming off a bit rude, I think, the only problem I have against Daft here is that he should have been more honest and patient with a possible victim of Cosmodore. This is a last minute addition, but Mark mentioned the idea of talking to Daftpina about how he treated Dylan. I asked Dylan about it initially, and Dylan actually said he was down to talk to Daft, but it would have to be him that initiated the conversation because Dylan was blocked by Daft on Discord and unable to message him on Twitter. Currently in our timeline, we have Cosmodore coming out about him dating a minor, the messages between him and Dylan, and then after this we have the teaser for the Cosmodore video, and the video itself. The teaser isn't really that significant. All it shows is that Daftpina was actually making a video on Cosmo and purposely not telling Dylan for whatever reason, despite him blatantly asking. This is just my opinion, but whenever you talk to someone trying to get information from them, and whenever you're talking to a minor who is in contact with Cosmodore, it is probably to your best interest to offer the best possible support network you can and be transparent with your motives. Instead of, trying to bring them out for all the information and drop them as soon as they're no longer needed. I want to briefly discuss the video actually because I think it's pretty important considering the entire arc leads up to it. The video's not that bad, at least I don't think it is. There's a lot of stuff that I think is great to include, and I think it's a great job at educating the viewer on Cosmo. But I think the route that Daft took to make that video wasn't the most pleasant. I'll explain the marketing. Daftpina is a great businessman and a great marketer. I think that much is clear. There's a video on his channel that I'm not going to talk about because it's not really relevant, but Daftpina's channel mainly consists of him reviewing storytime animators and artists. There'd be the odd deviation, like the time he talked about a child groomer, but other than that, his channel's relatively tame. The most controversy Daftpina would get involved with, other than the Jaden Animations one, would be him calling out tracers and corrupt creators for not correctly paying their staff. The relevancy of this being that the marketing you do for exposing a tracer is an entirely different ball game from exposing a child groomer, because one of them is much more serious and illegal than the other. I'll show you the marketing Daftpina did, if you haven't seen it already. We have the teaser, which doesn't do much in the long run, but it does its job correctly. It drums up hype for a video. And his audience, obviously not anticipating a video on a child groomer, so they think it's on Butch Hartman, or another tracer, or someone else who hasn't done anything on the level of Cosmodore. And then you post your official announcement, which is minutes after creators calling out Cosmodore, which has a photo of Cosmodore bouncing to the groove of a Kid Rock song, with the lyrics in the background murmuring. I'm not going to say it, so here. And this post had negative reception to it, which I'll put up on screen right now. And around the time of the reveal, this actually being 10 PM, July 27th, a lot of the creators in the cartoon community started to come out with their Cosmodore story. Which is a great thing, now that I'm actually thinking about it. But thinking of Daftpina posting this tasteless reveal, I was really irked the wrong way. A mutual of mine, Ellis Mark, came out with his story about Cosmodore, and I think he misworded a few things. this leading to my friend Exik calling it out. This led on to Mark clarifying his position, and ultimately still getting backlash even after this. I don't want to increase tensions again. I think it's a really counterproductive thing, considering that this situation has mostly been resolved. The only reason Mark was getting backlash was because Daftpina had a lot of information which made Mark innocent in a way. I'll be bluntly honest here. July 27th, my thoughts on the situation were mostly one-sided. I struggled to trust anyone in that community. Come July 31st, this video comes out and everyone gets a full picture of what happened. It changes the narrative in a way that the audience gets a much clearer image on Cosmodore because the full story is released. With Daftpina, from a viewer perspective, which is me, looking at Mark's Twitter and seeing his post and then letting him get tons of criticism from other creators and viewers, with there being a lot of evidence that would deem Mark innocent, that wasn't public until the video released. My original thoughts on this were a lot more cynical, as I thought that Daftpina was holding back information for a big reveal at the end of the video. And if you remember what I said in the beginning of the video regarding Daft, quote-unquote, purposely holding back information, I want to address that, along with sensationalizing. You have the Daftpina reveal that the video was on Cosmo, and then you have the statement Mark made. In this situation, Daft and Mark both got criticism, but for different reasons. Daft made an additional post further clarifying the video. However, between Daftpina's clarification post and the actual video coming out, there was a 3-day period between the statements and the Cosmodore video. I don't know about you, but I fail to understand as a viewer why Daftpina couldn't add Mark to the post, saying that Cosmo manipulated Mark, and that the rest would be told in the Cosmo video. From a viewer's perspective, it would kind of look like Daftpina was holding back this information for a big drop. However, since talking to Mark, I now know that wasn't actually the case, and it was much more of a last-minute addition, I think. I sort of thought that Daft would have came to Mark's aid and defended him. Other than that, though, I do feel pretty bad for him because he got caught in part of a situation that was pretty diabolical. I do think there was information held back from Dylan purposely, though. Let me explain. If Dylan knew more about what Daftpina was doing, 1, it would have looked less ominous, and 2, he would have known much more, and he might have been more likely to help out Daft with the video. That is just speculation. Addressing the sensationalization point I made earlier on, I wouldn't call Daftpina a sensationalist, but I definitely think how he advertised this video was sensationalizing the event in some way. That way being that he advertised it in the same way he'd advertise a Tracer video. As a member of the community, I felt pretty bad whenever the video came out, and it shined a whole different light on Mark's friendship with Cosmo that I never saw before, which just goes to show, don't jump to conclusions. To conclude what I've said, I think the marketing was insensitive to other victims of child grooming, regardless if the victim gave the AOK or not. Additionally, I think it's a weird move to monetize a video. Now, I'm not one to tell you what to do with your money, but my best bit of advice would be to donate it to a charity. I understand if you need monetization to help in the algorithm, but the least you could have done was clarify the money from the video was going to your pocket or elsewhere. If any money's made from this video, which there probably won't be much, I'll be giving it to Stop It Now, UK and Ireland, a foundation with the aims to protect children from sexual abuse. If you're not from the UK or Ireland, I'll leave other organisations you can donate to if you want. Thanks in advance. I think it's safe to say that Cosmodore isn't in the best state of mind. He wrote a comment on the Daftpina video and gave further context to the things said in the video. I actually haven't mentioned the content in the Daftpina video because I presume you're on this video because you've watched that video. Cosmodore has posted on a story a few times, once before the Daftpina video and once after the Daftpina video. The one he released on the 30th of July attempts to clarify his stance more, whilst also taking accountability for his actions. The post on a story after the Daftpina video was of a completely different tone. It just shows Cosmodore is at rock bottom, and some of the stuff said is graphic and I'd prefer not to talk about it. That's not trying to justify Cosmo. What Cosmo did was deplorable and unjustifiable no matter what way you spin it. Manipulating a minor and dating them for several months, continuing to stalk them even after breaking up, on top of planning to meet up to do God knows what. Defending Cosmodore isn't really possible in this situation, and despite Cosmo bringing his channel back up with most of his videos restored, it is practically impossible for him to continue being in the community. The best thing he can do right now is cease contact with those in the community and never turn back. This section is a lot shorter, only for the reason that I struggle to bring nuance to the Cosmodore situation. Most of what could be said has been said, and I think for that reason, it is better to leave it shorter. Initially I had a thing in the video saying I wish him the best, but considering what he's done, I can't really wish him the best. So I guess I want Cosmo to get help more than anything else, and other than that, addressing Daftpina one last time. I kind of want an apology between Daftpina and Dylan. He explained it himself. I think we're at a different stage now, and I do think that overall, a lot of the situation was a big misunderstanding and bad communication on both sides' part. So in that way, I do understand why there'd be conflict, but at the same time, I do think we're past that situation and we can come to a new resolve. Thank you for watching. Donate to the charities below and check sources out if you disagree with anything. This video isn't about me. If you want to support me, watch my other videos, but thanks.